Okay, good afternoon and good evening, everybody. I'm Captain Pradhan. I welcome you all to this webinar titled, How Does UK Manage to Retain #1 Position of Maritime Destination? So we have some experts, and to set the ball rolling, just before that, just a couple of points I would like to tell you. We don't want to disturb the speakers once they are talking. So to ensure that, I am going to mute everybody. So it is just a part of our, operational requirements. Whoever wants to say something can put it on a chat. We have some dedicated CMMI wardens who will be sort of going through the chat. And if you want to ask something, can put it on a chat. Okay, but if you want we have some dedicated CMMI wardens who will be so many chats, sort of going through the chat, and may get lost. If you want to ask something, can put it on a chat. We have some dedicated CMMI wardens who will be so many chats, sort of going through the chat, and may get lost. If you want to ask something, can put it on a chat. We have some dedicated CMMI wardens who will be so many chats, sort of going through the chat, and may get lost. If you want to,
Captain Shah.
Is it all right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Deepak Shetty ji, ex-Director General of Shipping, and our honorable panelists of today, Captain Ajit, Capt, Chief Examiner, Maritime and Coastguard Agency, Southampton, UK, Captain D. Chadburn, Master, Honourable Company of Master Mariner, Wellington, London, UK, Mr. Bob, CEO, UK Chamber of Shipping, London, UK, Dr. Captain Syamantak Bhattacharya, Pro Vice Chancellor, Southampton University of UK, and seniors and friends. Today we have gathered here to discuss about the excellent topic, that's how does UK manage to retain #1 position of maritime destination. In my opinion, becoming #1 in any field is a relatively easy task, but maintaining #1 position is too difficult. You will understand and appreciate the world tonnage has shifted to Far East, and it was known fact that the maritime destination will also shift in due course of time to the Far East. But it didn't happen. Why? Business shifted, but destination did not. In my opinion, major factors were as follows: know the competitors, know your customers, differentiate, that is, develop a unique selling point, set up your marketing, update your image, look after your existing customers, target your markets, new markets, expand your offer, be the best employer, look at the future. Let's hear from experts and carry some takeaway. I'm sure that all CMMI members will be benefited with this panel discussion. I also take this opportunity to announce our new chapter in Singapore has started functioning after court approval in last month. Now we have 17 chapters, including 2 international chapters in Dubai and Singapore. I'm looking forward to start in UK and Hong Kong as well. Our membership has also grown up to approximately 3,500 members. I wish to thank all of you for participating in this forum, and especially to the panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Pastor?
I would now like to invite our own warden and our fellow, Dr. Captain Suresh Bhardwaj. Today he will be acting as a moderator in this particular panel discussion. So, Dr. Suresh Bhardwaj.
Thank you very much, Captain Pradhan.
Thank you very much, Master, for this wonderful opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just first share some important data with you. If you can see the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Zinhua Baltic International Shipping Center Development Index of top 10 shipping services cities. And you will find that consistently over the years, London is placed at number 1. We also find Singapore consistently again at number 2. Shanghai in 2019 has replaced Hong Kong at number 3. You will also notice number 7, Mumbai. We are not too far behind. And we have come up from actually number 10 there. So if you look at these statistics, you find that the hardware of a particular location, it is said to make up about 20% only. But the general environment actually contributes 80% towards this development, towards the sustainability of a successful international maritime center. Gentlemen, if you look at the cluster theory, there is something called the triple helix model. If you can imagine a spiral staircase with a common central axis, that helix of innovation, it refers to a constant interaction between the academia, the industry, and the governments. And that fosters this economic and social development. And that is what underpins the success of a cluster. So keeping that in mind, we today have with us, representing the government, Maritime Coastguard Agency, Captain Ajit Jacob here. Captain Ajit Jacob, he is the chief examiner. He joined MCA in October 2013. He's already put in 7 years there. He has gone through the grind from training to surveys to audits to PSC inspections. And also he has been the client technical manager. Later on, we'll ask him what is that for the UK register. And prior to this, he was sailing with a very reputed Stena Lines for 7 years and made and master on Aframax tankers, VLCCs, RoPax ferries. Next, representing the industry, who better than the UK Chamber of Shipping, which is represented by its CEO here, Mr. Bob Sanguinetti. The UK Chamber of Shipping is the voice of UK shipping industry, and it works with the government, with the international organizations to champion and protect the industry on behalf of its members, and ensuring that UK remains as a leader in the global maritime business. And speaking of Bob himself, what a profile. Graduated from Oxford University. He has served the Royal Navy as the Commodore. He has been a CEO of the Gibraltar Port Authority. And of course, now he is steering the affairs of the UK Chamber of Shipping. Representing the academia, gentlemen, we couldn't have anybody better than Dr. Professor, Captain, Pro Vice Chancellor, Syamantak Bhattacharya from Solent University, Southampton. He actually joined as a dean of the very famous Warsaw School of Maritime Science and Engineering in 2016. He has very successfully led a significant change program there, major infrastructure investments. And now as a pro vice chancellor, Syamantak's focus is on growing the university's research and knowledge exchange profile, something which he's very, very good at. He has also sailed, gentlemen. He has sailed with Denholm. He has been a superintendent in Singapore as well. So truly a professional maritime researcher academician. And lastly, our own counterpart in the UK, with whom, if I may say, CMMI has an umbilical connect? The Honourable Company of Master Mariners of UK, represented by none other than the master himself, Captain Derek Chadburn. Captain Derek Chadburn, he started his career in 1968, which is a good half a century in shipping today. He is from Leeds, Yorkshire, Hull, and he has been through the grind as well of all the vertical in the shipping industry, from LPG ships to training to consultancy. And this may interest you, gentlemen, this may interest you. He is a fully qualified cricket umpire. The Honourable Company of Master Mariners of UK, they encourage to maintain a very high and honourable standards of professional conduct. They offer advisory services in all areas concerning and affecting merchant navy, be it judicial, commercial, scientific, educational, technical matters, really ensuring that London truly remains a beacon for guiding and be emulated for their global shipping operations. So, gentlemen, with these introductions, let us get straight into the panel discussion. So, since it is the government that plays a pivoting role in this triple helix of the cluster, and the government is the one that creates a very favorable and framework conditions, I would like to first ask you, Captain Ajit Jacob. Captain Ajit, the UK Certificate of Competency, UK Maritime Education and Training, UK Flag Performance, #1 in the Paris MOU. Absolutely awesome. Now, over the years, as the master was mentioning, although the maritime profession has lost its sheen, the number of vessels have gone away, the tonnage is in the Far East, UK has consistently remained on top, what we have seen. What is it? What is it about this MCA governance that really enables such a high-performing environment, Captain Ajit?
Captain Bhattacharya, first of all, thank you for giving us the invite and allowing us the opportunity to speak among such prestigious attendees and speakers. So you mentioned as UK being able to maintain the #1 position, and I am a great believer that this can't be achieved in isolation. So I'm a great believer in team effort, and that's precisely the reason that it is how we perform, because how we are. So maritime is an area where UK has a rich history. Even now, 95% of the trade is done through ships. So it's imperative that we work very, very closely with stakeholders as a government body to achieve high standards. So I'll start with a maritime training and education because that comes under my area right now. So I'll touch into what processes we have now and how we are preparing for the future. So it's happening everywhere that there are other professions now which seem to be a lot more lucrative, and it is a challenge to get fresh talent into the maritime industry. So what we have here at present is something known as smart funding, which is support for maritime training by the government, which allows us to attract new talent, where the training is funded by the government, and hence the interest in the maritime sector is maintained. So when I say a maritime sector, the funding is, for now, it's for the merchant navy candidates. They make a start. It's for the OOW COCs, and last few years we have actually extended that to the second COCs as well, for the second engineers and the chief mate, and we will include the ETOs as well in that. So that is a key. And actually during the COVID times, where it was a challenge to get officers qualified because of non-availability of courses, and seat time was a challenge as well. So SMART gave us the tool to actually fund them for that extra time, so that they could continue on the embark on the journey, to continue on the journey for being an officer of watch. So that was done.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not just about the funding. Funding is just one aspect. So we are blessed in that we have got forums where we can interact closely with the key players in the maritime sector. So this is even before we initiate any change in regulation. There is a process through the stakeholders, and which we continue throughout till such time as we implement that. So this engagement is facilitated through the Merchant Navy Training Board, MNTB, which sits with the UK Chamber of Shipping.
Yes.
So it comprises of the main board, and then various working groups as well, through which we discuss, depending on the technical expertise that we need for each area, we have members who can contribute to that. So hence we take things forward. So that's the present, but what about the long term? So technology is fast evolving. With that, the government has produced something which is known as a Maritime 2050, a roadmap. So it is a roadmap for future as to how the maritime sector would look like in 2050. Okay. So as a part of that, we've got a commission known as Maritime Skills Commission, MSC, and it has been formed to lead the sector's work in ensuring that the maritime sector has a pipeline of talented people to serve all part of shipping. So when I say all part of shipping, it's not only about the merchant navy, but includes the maritime sector, which includes the ports and the legal aspect, the side of shipping as well. So that is there, and it is based on that Maritime 2050 that we at MCA have formulated our own 3-yearly plan. So all the points in that is included within our 3-year plan as well. So with respect to UK Certificate of Competency, that obviously is for us a route to the first step, which is the COC, first COC, and as a regulator, we ensure that again we engage with our stakeholders so that the underpinning knowledge for those certificate of competencies are delivered to high standards. Again, the forum is there, as I mentioned, where we sit along with the training colleges, the Maritime University, and shipping companies are involved as well. So in terms of training, the route that a seafarer follow can be different. They can follow a HND and HNC or a foundation degree. But what we do is, as a regulator, we ensure consistency. What we have is the safety papers are done by the MCA, and before a COC is issued, the oral exams are again conducted by the MCA. So that ensures that although the candidate can follow different routes, but the standards are consistent, and we try to ensure that. So and that has not changed. In fact, you mentioned earlier that COVID actually presented us with a few opportunities as well. So and that's exactly what we did by changing the oral exam to an online oral exam. So that we could continue what we were doing previously. The college training and the assessments were actually changed to online medium as well, similar to what you have done in India. So now you talked about flag performance.
Yes.
So we are very proud.
The UK register is number 1 in Paris MOU, and I see that you are giving 24/7 by 365 service. You recognize the COC of 52 other countries. There is no requirement to employ UK seafarers. Lowest registration fee, no flag taxes. You have something called enhanced authorization scheme. Oh, please do tell us.
So that's we are proud of the fact that we were the best performing flag in Paris Port State Control, and has been consistently high performing in the last few years. So although we have, and also I need to stress that our fleet is not the youngest. Average age of our fleet is 20.1 years, whereas other flags have much less than that. I mean, some 12 years and lesser. So, but what we have done is that we have that consistent liaising with the company through the ISM regime. So we keep the DOC, and to an extent we do the ISM audits as well for the vessel, and that has given us that engagement with the company on an annual basis, and that has helped. And also what we have within MCA is all our qualified surveyors. They are customers. We deliver the customer service manager duties as well, where each company is have a senior surveyor as a dedicated customer service manager whom they can approach if they have any issues. For example, a request for exemptions, temporary dispensation, and that is there, and a customer account manager as well. So and we are now providing that 24/7 service, 365 days a year. So that is the key. But along with that, we pride ourselves to have the technical expertise within headquarters, where we can actually provide that service to the company. So we have got a technical standards branch where we have different areas dealing with SOLAS, MAPOL, to provide papers, new papers for IMO. Again, it is not an individual effort. We for all areas we liaise with our companies through the UK Chamber of Shipping and other key companies as well to produce the needful. So future things are constantly changing. So we with an eye on the future, we have within MCA known as the Maritime Futures Technology Team. So what they do is the intention is to drive forward and support implementation of cutting edge innovation in both emission reduction and autonomy in the maritime sector. So the new team has been set up so as to enable UK to lead the way in maritime emission reduction and automated vessel technology. So this is so that we are engaged in the process with the companies even before a regulation comes into place, so that we are not lagging behind as we have been in some cases previously. So and this is absolutely important, as we know that these things will pick up pace, and I feel as a responsible citizen, it is our duty to contribute in some way or the other for the betterment of the environment, and this is one of the ways to do that.
Oh sure. I mean, you've covered the maritime education and training. You've covered the flag and some of the very key issues which you talked about. Looking ahead and keeping yourself apace, being one step ahead of the regulation, and also working for the client. You're working in the government, but you're working for the client. Awesome. Thank you. We will come back to you a little bit later. Thank you so much, Captain Ajit. Turning to the industry, Mr. Bob Sanguinetti. How does the UK Chamber of Shipping play this catalytical role in this very successful government-academia relationships? You know, Captain Ajit was mentioning about the MNDB, and I have interacted very closely with, in my previous position, we had HND programs running in collaboration with the South Shields and the Glasgow College, and I really knew the performance of this MNDB, the way they were keeping themselves much ahead of the basic STCW requirements, and they are part of you. And which is a key link between the shipping companies, the educational establishments, and the trade unions. I've also seen you've got a wonderful strategic plan out there, and I've seen that you have recently collaborated with OP2 as well to make sure that you have a qualified manpower for the offshore sector as well. So Mr. Bob, please, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to the Company of Master Mariners of India and your members for allowing me the opportunity to spend some time with you today. I feel humbled in the distinguished gathering that you've been able to put together today. You've asked lots of questions in that introduction. I'll do my best to cover them, but I thought that first of all I would start with a little bit of background about the UK Chamber of Shipping, so that you understand and viewers understand the context of where we operate. The Chamber is, as you know, the trade association and the main representative body of the UK shipping industry, and we have about 200 member companies. Half of whom are ship owners and ship managers, and the other half are maritime service-related providers. And we've got energy majors amongst our membership, cruise companies, ferry companies, offshore support vessels, tugs, tankers, and just about everything in between. So a very, very representative body, which I think is one of the sources of our strength. As you've heard already in the introduction, we work very closely with government, with Parliament, with international organizations and others, including academia and other sectors of industry, to champion and protect our industry on behalf of our members. And crucially, we support our members on lobbying in governments to try and influence changes to legislation and regulations and so on. And in that role, we clearly work very, very closely with the MCA. In terms of our priorities, Suresh, you mentioned our strategic plan. We've got a 5-year strategic plan that sets out our key priorities. But for us, our 2 key objectives are decarbonisation in support of climate change and promotion of safety. And of course, we focus on a number of other issues, and most recently we've had the distraction of the departure of the UK from the European Union and the COVID-19 crisis. And I'm very happy to discuss how the Chamber has been involved and continues to be involved on those 2 priorities. But if I go back to decarbonisation, because I think this is the one key issue, enduring issue, that is affecting the shipping industry in a way that we've not seen before. We all know that shipping contributes about 2% of global greenhouse gases. And although there's been huge progress over the last few years and leadership shown by the IMO in setting targets for 2050 to reduce emissions, much more needs to be done. And innovation has to be at the heart of tackling climate change. And as a proud maritime nation in the UK with expertise across the country, I believe the UK should be leading the way in developing the technologies of tomorrow. But we cannot do that in isolation, both within the UK and internationally. We have to do it with collaboration. And you've mentioned already the importance of collaboration between the industry, academia, research and development establishment, other sectors of industry, and of course, government. Absolutely fundamental that government plays its key pivotal leadership role. We're concerned that coronavirus and the crisis has had an impact on shipping and perhaps has been a distraction away from our responsibilities towards climate change, but it's something that we would like to see baked into the COVID-19 recovery plans that we're seeing taking root in most countries across the globe. I mentioned safety, and very briefly, what I will say there is that we have, as you rightly point out, developed a safety culture charter, which we launched last year, almost 12 months ago now. And that's to reinforce the importance of top-level leadership and engagement when it comes to setting a culture on board our ships whereby people feel safe and secure, and they come home to their loved ones with no injury at the end of their time on board ship. We've managed to secure the signing of almost 30 companies representing about 1,000 ships and about 90,000 seafarers. So we're on our way to achieving our goal, but it's something that we will never be able to ease back on, because safety requires constant supervision and requires direction and interest from the top. In terms of our key strengths and the relationships that that we enjoy at the Chamber, which allows us to exert influence wherever possible. The government, as Ajit has already mentioned, launched its Maritime 2050 strategy almost 2 years ago now, and together with a Clean Maritime Plan. And these are visions for the next 30 years, which I think are unparalleled in most other countries. You pull this together and they present UK shipping with significant challenges and opportunities going forward. But I think crucially, as we look at different aspects of technology, security, people, innovation, which are at the heart of the strategy, our key role in the Chamber is to hold the UK government and the Department for Transport in particular to account over the successful delivery of that vision. And that's something that we do on a day-to-day basis. Suresh, you also mentioned the Merchant Navy Training Board, which of course the UK Chamber of Shipping plays a key part in. For those of you who might not be familiar with it, the MNTB promotes and develops seafarer education, training and skills. So the relationship between the ship owning community and the maritime training providers is effectively what the MNTB does. Importantly, the projects are all industry driven and they focus on supporting the shipping companies and training establishments in the recruitment, training and retention of UK seafarers. And again, you mentioned our collaboration with APITO. We've seen an opportunity here to work more closely with the oil and gas industry. There is a lot of overlap between shipping and the qualifications and the training that our seafarers enjoy and those of the oil and gas industry as well. So we're looking at how we can bring them closer together and facilitate the transferring of skills between oil and gas and shipping. So exciting times ahead. I think I've pretty much said enough there, which hopefully gives you an overview of what the Chamber does and how we do it. To summarise, if I could, and to address specifically the title of the webinar, how does the UK manage to retain its leading position in the maritime world? I would say there are four areas that allow us to do that. First of all, it's history and geography. Clearly, we're an island nation, a proud seafaring nation, and one that relies extensively on shipborne trade for its goods. 95% of our goods come by sea, half our food supplies come by sea, and a quarter of our energy is imported by sea. So that gives us a clear focus on shipping. We enjoy strong relationships, absolutely fundamental, with government, with industry, with academia, and with the manufacturers. Thirdly, we've got a vibrant shipping sector, as you've heard already, the maritime cluster that exists in London with law firms, insurance companies, and shipbrokers. But it's not just London, it's across the country. We have significant ship managing activity in Scotland. And of course, we have excellent colleges and universities with maritime expertise throughout the country. And the final one is the respect that the country has for seafarers. And we've seen this highlighted and reinforced during COVID-19, when the government very early on in the crisis extended the definition of key workers to seafarers and offshore workers, reinforcing without a shadow of a doubt the importance the importance of the contribution that they make to the national economy. I think that's all I'll say. I'm very happy to take questions now or later on as you see fit. But once again, thank you very much for allowing me to take part in this webinar. Thank you.
Bob, thank you so much. Bob, thank you so much. You have said it all. A very accountable and responsible narrative from an industry perspective, if I may say, talking about safety, talking about climate change, and leading the way, as you said, with respect to the MNTB and what industry needs with respect to education. And of course, your heterogeneous core of the critical mass that you have with your cluster. That's wonderful. Lots of learning for us to take away. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
All right, coming to academia, ladies and gentlemen, we have Professor Syamantak. Professor Syamantak, research and development and education is your forte. It is also a very critical mechanism in any kind of a center or a cluster development. As far as UK is concerned, it is not only a preferred destination for general education, but of course, maritime, the world over, you have students coming from the world over. And you're so close to MCA in Southampton. So how do you see MET emerging? And for most of us here, STCW is be all and end all to go by. Captain Syamantak.
Suresh, thank you. I too feel very humbled to be invited to this, and I really want to thank the organizer. And I hope I can do justice this evening for you. From the maritime education point of view, I think we all agree that this is a critical, a central part of what we do in our lives. Education is absolutely central to every sphere. I think that changes our lives. It changes our view towards life. It changes our understanding of the society. So education means everything that is so fundamental to us as a society. And I see maritime education as no different in that case. So you touched on STCW, and I probably just want to differentiate between maritime education and training to start with. And I just want to say that STCW, of course, has its own place in the industry. It's not without its challenge. We know how many times we have heard that this STCW offers the minimum standards, and it is brought in such a way that all the flag states of all kinds, all shapes, are able to comply with it. So, and there are more experts in the room who can talk about STCW much better than I can. But I think what really is the differentiator between education and training, and maritime is no different in that sense, is if you look at training first, it's for more immediate purpose, and it's got an appeal to the to have some limited functionalities of cognition. In business talk, I mean, training is for today, and training is for a job. Training and also sometimes specific to even a ranks. If you look at seafaring operations and management levels are separate, so it's less transferable. Whereas education, on the other hand, is significantly different. It's about it's creating knowledge for life. It provides transferable understanding of the world around us. It needs some contextualization, of course, wherever you apply, but you can keep it's a portable knowledge. You can take it with you. It's a gift for life, and I think from the knowledge sector point of view, maritime education is quite central, and clearly this is something I think in the UK we have the benefit of. And you started by introducing, if you remember, and I think Captain Jha said that at the start, that things have moved to the Far East an awful lot, but yet UK maintains its position as number one. And I think I would also say that if you look at, and it's not a correlation, I think it's a causation. If you look at the universities in the Far East, if you look at other education that's happening elsewhere in the world, we still have maintained our main educational prowess in the UK. If you look at the Oxfords and the Cambridge and the UCLs and the many others. So as I said, this is the fact that the Maritime is still as a leader in the UK, and the fact that the main education, not talking about maritime education generally, is a leader in the UK. I'm pointing it out. This is not a correlation. This is fundamental connection here between how education drives everything. So when it comes to the education in the maritime sector, of course, it's a long history, isn't it? In Warsash School alone, which is part of Solent University, where I am, of course, we can trace back to easily 85 years of history of maritime education. Equally, there are other colleges in the UK have got equally bright and very long history. So it is it's about education that I'm particularly interested in to talk to you about, because I think, having established the importance of education, we need to look at what is it that we are offering in the UK that is so special. And I think one of the first things that come to my mind is that it's the quality of what a student is able to learn from by coming to a university in the UK. And it's the technology of applying how you want to learn. It's the question of how the curriculum is set, and it's also a question of what is it that the facilitators, the staff, the teachers, the educationists are doing about transferring the knowledge. And I can spend hours and hours on this education side, but I think what's important, the gist is that I think what we have kind of mastered in the UK context of education is touching on all of these three areas. So it's a question of where is learning taking place. And if anything, if I were to talk to you about this 6 months ago, I'd have said it's a matter of both space and technology. So where is the learning taking place in terms of space, as well as what is the mode of learning? What technology are we using? But I think I'll move away from space a lot now for obvious reasons. But the universities in the UK were already prepared for use of technology, and we too in Solent were. So by using the word technology, I just want to, in simple terms, of course, just remind ourselves it's not a question of putting the PowerPoint slides on the screen. Okay, it's much more significantly different from that. It's a question of understanding what, in fact, works in the for the learners. And sometimes, if you look at the learners as younger learners who are more impressionable learners, what is it that they will use when they learn? For example, they will use the phones, they will use the virtual learning environment, and clearly we need to capitalize on that. There are a number of different channels that a virtual learning environment can take place, and almost I've been through this myself, especially over the last 6 months. It's almost as good as sitting in a classroom. In some cases, it is even better because you get more personalized attention using all sorts of facilities, quiz and chat function, question answer session, going back, recording sessions and playing that again. So clearly that's absolutely an important part of how this technology is used. And as I said, in the UK, this has been there for some time, and in our university for teaching the maritime students, we absolutely use it. Then I think the important thing is the curriculum. What is it that we want to teach? And remember, I just said to you earlier that it's about taking some knowledge with you, isn't it? The maritime education is carrying it with you, then applying it in the context. And I think that's very important, because it's not about just teaching seafarer, seafaring. And as we know, in the UK, the average duration that a seafarer stays on is 8 years at sea. So they move on. So you have to prepare them for the future. Some of them leave the sector entirely, but a great majority of them don't. They move to those other supporting sectors in the UK, for which London and other parts, other cities in the UK is thriving. Those commercial sectors, those chartering, shipbroking, law, insurance, all of the sectors require graduates from the shipping industry. So it's about modernizing the curriculum to ensure that they can take this knowledge with them throughout their life, into their next stage of their lives even. And when you teach, it's a modernization is very important. Curriculum updating is very important. Equally important is what stays in the curriculum and what we have to leave behind. There is if you look at how it was done in the 50s, 60s, even when I was doing my maritime education training in India and in the UK, there was a lot more didactic teaching, where there were teachers who held the knowledge, transmitted the knowledge by sitting in a classroom all in a row, and that was possibly the only source. If you were clever, you'd go to the library. But that does not work anymore. Knowledge is everywhere. So what is the purpose of a teacher then? So I'll touch on that. So it's a question of modernizing the curriculum. That's very important. So it's a way of teaching as well as the way of assessing. And I know a lot of modernization program is underway in MCN, as Ajit quite rightly pointed out. We have to keep up with what is the pedagogic research telling us how learning takes place, and that kind of that transformation is important. I'm not denouncing importance of history and legacy, how things are, but when it comes to education, it is clearly a catching up exercise that the maritime world has to do. We know that we still have to think about whether the assessment side of things, how it is best done. How do we understand this learning has taken place? How do we understand the learning outcome has been met? And we need to ask ourselves the question whether maritime learning can only be met by sitting in an examination at the end of it all. So the other thing I kind of briefly touched on is the teachers, and these are the people who have got the incredible. They're in a position of. They're very fortunate to be in the position that they are in. They can change the lives and the minds of young people, especially, and that with that comes the added responsibility of what a teacher should be doing in teaching. And they have to move on from being a teacher, a transmitter of knowledge, to be a facilitator, and that's what I think the UK universities have done over the years and have learned to do it. And again, in the maritime sector, we are doing what we can, but I'm sure there is a lot to catch up on. So, I mean, in terms of what should come in, what shouldn't, what should we leave out? That's something we ought to work with the MCA, with the government, and with the industry. And we have been very fortunate. We've got an incredibly good relationship with the other players in the sector. We have worked very closely with the roadmap of UK 2050. We have been a very active contributor to that, I should say, when the decisions were being made. We had visits from the government. We had a number of visits from the minister herself at the time. So it's something that we genuinely believe in, that unless the education keeps up with the future, we will not be able to maintain our position. And you know what? This is how it happened back in the 1950s, back in the 1970s, back in the 1990s. We have always, in the UK, certainly, we have managed to keep ahead of the curve. I just mentioned one quick thing about maritime simulation in terms of the Warsaw School. This is where simulation took birth. Back in the 1970s, I've seen some photos and I've seen some old device kept in the locker room in Warsaw, where there were just a tiny few dots which we could create only for nighttime visually seeing and changing the location of dots to know the aspect of the ship, etc. So that goes back to 1970s. So that is when that was picked up by MCA. And that time it was not MCA, it was known differently. Department of Transport also came along, and that became the norm in the country. That was going back to 1970. When it became the norm in the country, the IMO took note of it, and then that became the norm in the sector. So that, but why I take this example is because it is a step change that we could bring in to maritime education and training. And I think the edge that you're referring to, Suresh, how we managed to maintain, is repeatedly taking the lead on making the step changes. That's what we have to keep doing, and that's what we have been doing. So I hope I have covered most of the things. I mean, I could go into the depth of education. As I said, I could talk about Bloom's taxonomy, from knowledge to evaluation and all the rest of it. But I think I've kind of given the main message, and I hope I've answered your question, Suresh.
Yeah, Dr. Bharadwaj, you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yes, Syamantak, thank you very much. In your typical diplomatic style, you have covered, emphasized the role of going into the fundamentals of learning and assessment, the testimonies, group to assessment. We hardly see any kind of data anywhere happening. Standing, learning, and how assessment has to be carried out. Something has to be done. Researchers, teachers with research-based strategies can apply wonderful analytical rigor and insight into the current set, which is truly lacking. And that's where I think when you go into the education, where UK stands out. So thank you very much for this awakening call for us, Syamantak. Okay, coming. Captain Chadburn. Honourable Company of Master Mariners UK. So I compliment you on the iconic HQS Wellington. That's your office. I had the fortune of having a wonderful dinner on board the ship, and of course your legacy and kind of efforts you are undertaking to maintain professional standards. Let us know. How do you do this? Everything is wonderful. You have a chartered master mariner, so Captain Chadburn. Captain Chadburn?
I'm afraid I've lost you, sir. The technology appears to have let me down.
Captain Bharadwaj, please repeat your questions to Captain Chadburn.
Captain Bharadwaj?
Some internet problem appears to be.
No, there is no internet power.
How do you hear me?
Captain Suresh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yes.
Please repeat
Yes, I can.
Please repeat your question.
Captain Chad, yeah, was I not audible? I'm so sorry about this. A bit of an internet issue here with me. But what I'm trying to say is that we would like to know about how the is maintaining these professional standards. And you have got an excellent mentoring scheme. There is something called Chartered Master Mariner scheme. So please do tell us, Chadburn.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to join in today. It's been incredibly interesting, and I feel very honoured to be able to do so. And you mentioned Wellington, and just a little bit of people perhaps don't know about Wellington, but Wellington is called a Grimsby-class sloop. She was commissioned into the Royal Navy in 1935, served in World War II as a convoy escort in the North Atlantic, and was purchased from the Ministry of Defence in 1948 to become the headquarters of the Honourable Company, and now she's berthed on the River Thames in London. The Honourable Company was formed in 1926, and we're looking forward to celebrating our centenary in 2026, obviously. But you asked about the mentoring scheme. I think the mentoring scheme is perhaps our pride and joy. We currently have 263 mentees in our mentoring scheme, and we have 197 active mentors and 29 freemen stroke liverymen who are waiting to be assigned a mentee. So we've got a lot of people really interested. And the mentoring scheme works like it's really to help the cadets when they leave college. And so we take cadets into the mentoring scheme when they're in phase 1 at college. They can join in phase 1. And so when they go from phase 1 into their first sea phase, we like to think that we provide an ear, a shore, someone they can talk to, if you like, a father figure. So all our mentors are freemen of the Honourable Company, which means they have a Master's STCW Unlimited, and we have two categories of mentees. We have apprentices, and it depends on when they join the scheme, when they become a cadet. If they become a cadet under the age of 21, then they are an apprentice, and as we are a City of London livery company, they are apprenticed to the City of London, and so therefore they have to have what the City of London call a master, and the master has to be a freeman of the City of London, and therefore he is a liveryman of the Honourable Company. So, but he's still got that STCW background. All the others, and we currently have 97 apprentices. So the other ones are associate members, and they sometimes get a liveryman as a mentor, but they do at least get a freeman. And the idea is that we can help those. It's fine in the colleges, but it's the practical experience. And has been mentioned previously. Although these cadets go on British flag ships, occasionally they are the only native English speaker on board those ships. And the officers on those ships perhaps have not followed the British training system, the MNTB training system, and perhaps don't really have a full understanding of it. And the cadet has to fill a record book in. So what we try and do as a company is we provide an ear. So if the cadet has a problem or something he doesn't understand, or he's on a container ship and he has a problem with a general cargo ship issue or something like that, then his mentor will be able to help him with that. And if the mentor doesn't know the answer, then, as we say, he'll know a man who does, because someone in the Honourable company will have that knowledge, and we have access to that. So while the relationship between the mentor and the mentee is fundamentally informal, legal complexities of modern life require that the scheme exhibits a degree of formality, ensuring there's an audible trail that provides protection for the mentee, the mentor, and the Honourable company. And so we have a formal reporting system, and every quarter the cadet has to report in his headquarters of what he's doing, or what she's doing, and how they're getting on. And freemen and liverymen of the Honourable Company are expected to demonstrate integrity, professionalism in all aspects of their conduct, being reliable, honest, thoughtful, decent and courteous. And we try and instill that in attributes in our mentees. One part of the mentee system that is perhaps very useful is that once the cadet gets their officer of the watch, they get their officer of the watch. They do not leave the mentoring scheme. They carry on in the mentoring scheme. The aim of the mentoring scheme is to take that person through to a master's, to get their master's certificate, and therefore get them to become a freeman of the livery of freeman of the city of Honourable Company, and therefore give something back. And some of these mentor-mentee relationships do not end at the master's level. One of my own mentees is now a pilot on the River Humber here in Hull. He still speaks to me, still asks me for his advice,
I see.
and he even invited me to his wedding.
Okay.
So he's not my mentee anymore, but he's my friend. So that is the mentoring system.
Excellent.
And by the way, we also have our own cadets. We sponsor cadets, and they're obviously in our mentoring system, but we sponsor our own cadets.
Oh.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, Captain.
And you asked about the Chartered Master Mariner scheme.
Chartered Master Mariner. Yes.
Which let me just say what a charter is, what a charter ship is. A charter is historically a royal warrant granted by the Crown, the state, permitting an activity or practice to be carried out by certain individuals, or a town or a city or a region. A chartership is a mark of excellence, indicating that the holder has reached the highest level of their profession. There is no higher standard in the world of professional and technical achievement than to be a chartered person. The Chartered Master Mariner scheme was launched in 2017, and to date there are 41. We have granted 41 charterships. So that's, in 3 years. We're rolling out the chartership scheme, and we have representation in 5 of the old Commonwealth countries, and we do actually have 2 Indian chartered master mariners. One is located in the United Kingdom, and one is based in Hong Kong. Also, the chartership is now being recognised by navies of states. And we have people from the Canadian, the New Zealand, the Australian, the UK, and even now the United States navies showing an interest in the programme. And some of those navies are now offering a financial bounty to those senior officers who are able to achieve chartered status. Although the chartership is the gift, if you like, of the Honourable Company, because we are a chartered a livery company and therefore we have a royal charter to operate. There are 5 stakeholder organisations within the chartership, and these are the UK Chamber of Shipping, and Bob Sanguinetti sits on the authorisation committee, the Nautical Institute, the Merchant Navy Training Board, the Royal Navy / Royal Fleet Auxiliary, and Trinity House. And there are 10 votes for someone to have achieved chartership. There's 10 people. There are 10 votes. The Honourable Company has 5 of those votes, and the other stakeholders have 1 each. And if there's a tie, the chairman gets the casting vote, and he's a member of the Honourable Company. And the current chairman of the Registration Authority is the former First Sea Lord, Sir Admiral Sir Nigel Hessenhigh. The requirements for this are tough, and we've set the bar deliberately high. And it's we see it as the industry gold standard for personal achievement and industry recognition. And you shouldn't approach the application process lightly. And there are a number of applicants who do not make the grade. And we caution careful and considered self-appraisal before engaging in the process. Part of the process is a very rigorous professional review interview, a PRI. And some of the people that have been through master's orals tell me that a PRI for the chartership, master's orals is a cakewalk compared to a PRI for the chartership. And once the chartership is granted, it has to be maintained, and it has to be maintained by a process of continual professional development. And every chartered master mariner has to report to the Registration Authority on an annual basis what they've done to continue their professional development, because that's what it's all about. And I think that's enough, is it? Do you have some questions? I'm happy to take questions.
Chadburn. And so, gentlemen, I have kind of run out of time. I now Warden Captain Mohan Nayak, who has been monitoring the chat box, and he will engage the panelists with the audience in a Q&A session. Captain Mohan, please.
Thanks, Captain Suresh. And thank you very much for all the panelists. They have given a wonderful insight into how UK has maintained its #1 position as a maritime destination. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Okay. So there are a few questions which I will take and address to each and every panelist. The first question is addressed to Captain Ajit Jacob. It is from Mr. YS, as he identifies himself in the chat. Any small print for the trainees who get the benefit of the UK government funding for maritime training? This is the first question addressed to Captain Ajit Jacob.
I understand his question must be regarding the process that's followed. The small print, it's in the M notice, MGN 555 gives details about how about the process and the funding program. So and further in COVID times, we further have MIN 611 and 615, which elaborates on the COVID side of funding.
Okay. The second question is also addressed to you by Captain Philip Matthew, our ex-master of the Company of Master Mariners. He is asking for your opinion on the Indian flagships being manned by foreign COC holders. Number 1, that is A. Number B, part B, he says, what is your opinion about the general feeling that the certification in UK is easier than other countries? And part C, he says, in your opinion, is UK better organized or equipped
even if they have less stake as ship owners, for their registered ships are less, or they're better equipped or organized in certifying, even though they have less stake in manning their own ships. In other words, they're manning for other owners. So there are three parts of the question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So in terms of, see, you would want to know that it's not only the UK. When we go to IMO, we sit as the UK plus the REG group, Red Ensign group, which is actually a huge chunk of shipping. So it includes Bermuda, Gibraltar, and everybody else as well. So in terms of allowing seafarer with other COCs to work on our ships, so for UK flagships, there is no such regulation. We do employ seafarers from other COC holders, and we have got a list in, for that, and it is based on the understanding that we have signed with them. So so that is the case, and that would be the case in future as well. They qualification and employing seafarers slightly different. We pride ourselves in terms of training and certification, because the training regime is actually in line with the technological developments as well. Hence the discussion we have had, it highlights the fact that we have got the right forums to do that. So and that would be the case.
Okay, thanks a lot, Captain Ajit. The second question was addressed to Mr. Bob Sanguinetti, but I think he's left. He's got some other engagement to attend to, but I will come back to that question later. Let's go to the next question, which is addressed to Captain Syamantak Bhattacharya. It is from Captain Dev Goswami for Captain Bhattacharya. What theoretical basis would you please develop to make shipping an area of less regulations and more efficiency? This is for Captain Bhattacharya. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Theoretical basis to make shipping more efficient. Is that the question again? Sorry.
I'll just repeat it. What theoretical basis would you please develop to make shipping an area of less regulations and more efficiency? So basically for targeting of less regulations, maybe less paperwork, something like that, and more efficient.
Well, as far as the maritime education and training is concerned, the shipping, clearly, I personally have sat at the opposite side of the table. I've been a student myself and gone to the journey, and now I'm sitting at the other end. I personally feel that the education that we offer should be more accepted in line with the rest of the education sector. If that means to get more theory into the learning journey, that would something I will completely promote, and I have been working on that for some time now, in terms of putting the maritime education in line with clearly a degree qualification, a post-degree qualification as well. So to bring the theory in, it's going to be, and I think the way the automation is, the way it's heading, clearly there is a need for a greater theoretical understanding of how the shipping works. But in terms of, so once you're able to incorporate more theoretical understanding in your learning journey, then it is possible that you can apply those learning into the context better. So you don't have to look at every regulation on its own right. If you understand the theoretical underpinnings better, then it might allow you to move away from understanding a regulation by regulation as opposed to a theoretical base.
Okay, fine. Next question. Are you done with it, or?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. The next question is also addressed to you, Captain Bhattacharya. It's from Captain Philip Matthew. Is UK preparing for the futuristic MASS mass training involving more of artificial intelligence and simulation?
I can say, thank you for the question. I can say that as we speak, we have in our university a particular research that's going on. And we are in a way very fortunate to run that research, because we are blessed with a with a ship model size ships. So we have ships which are typically 1/25th of the original size, and we have a large lake of roughly 12 to 14 models we have in that lake. So we are very much engaging with that exercise with Wärtsilä, a big industry body in the shipping sector, and we are trying to understand how would two ships react to each other when faced with a rules of the road situation. So just to give you one example of how Solent University is now engaging with this automation, but I'm sure there is a lot more happening in terms of what the UK MCA is engaging. And I understand from MCA, MCA is absolutely at the forefront of this as well. So you might want to also ask Captain Naik if Captain Ajit would like to add anything.
Sure. Captain Ajit, would you like to add something to this?
So, Captain Naik, I did mention that we have our Maritime Future Technology team who is now in full operation. So, as a part of that, we are in constant engagement with the companies who want to engage in autonomous operation. So we are in engaged consultation with them. So we want to be ahead of the game in terms of developing qualifications or any structure when it comes to those vessels.
Okay. The next question is again to Captain Bhattacharya. It's from Captain R.K. Kumar. It's again talking about regulations. Why are there so many regulations made by scientists who have which had to change, or they failed to look at the practicality of the situation or the solution? The examples he gives is, for example, snapback zones on ships, grade E steel, grade A steel corrosion, grade E steel corrosion. Where does the fault lie? Is it with the scientist or the practitioner or the facilitator? So many regulations which are probably, he says, made by the scientists.
Okay,
Which
so
they failed,
yeah, Captain Naik, thank you.
Yeah.
Captain Kumar, I think it's a very a question that can bring out a lot of emotion in a lot of people, of course, and accidents means loss, possibly even loss of lives. So for me, it's something that is, I think what the academics are doing is, of course, constantly naval architects, and in this case, as you mentioned, in terms of corrosion and stuff, are working in terms of finding out what is the best fit between safety and not to ever forget the cost of safety. So I think there is a fine balance. Unfortunately, we cannot be looking into safety by disregarding the cost of having safety, although we'd all love to. But the fact of the matter is that's a reality. So when that balance gets tilted in the wrong way, I think that's where it begins to go wrong. But as far as the academics are concerned, as far as the naval architecture is concerned, in fact, in our university also, there is the facilities where we are constantly working with the small vessel builders. For us and for academics like ourselves, I'm sure the primary concern is safety. So, but as I said, when that is met with the challenges of cost or other factors which are not conducive to safety, there where the problem starts, I suppose.
Right. Thanks, Captain Bhattacharya. I think this will be the last question before we move on to the next in the proceedings. It is for Captain Derek Chadburn, and it is addressed by Captain Philip Matthew. He is asking, how can the Honourable Company of Master Mariners London and the Company of Master Mariners India collaborate mutually for long-standing beneficial activities? This is part A. And the part B, he asks, what is a freeman and what is a liveryman? So, Captain Derek.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, speaking from the Honourable Company, we would love to collaborate greater with the Chartered Master Mariners of India, and maybe that could be that we could use that as a vehicle to roll out the chartership in India. It's coming to India. Watch this space. So yes, we would, we could probably work together on doing that. And the difference between a liveryman and a freeman is ages old. It's several hundred years old. A liveryman is a freeman of the City of London, whereas a freeman is just a freeman of the Honourable Company. By our Royal Charter granted by the Crown, we can only have 300 liverymen. We're not allowed to have any more. So it's quite privileged, but at the moment, we don't have 300. We have less than 300 at the moment. But that's the difference between a liveryman and a freeman.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Derek.
Well, there is another distinction.
Yes.
There's a distinction in the tie.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
A liveryman has a gold band on his tie, and a freeman has a silver band. So you can instantly, if you're on Wellington, you can instantly tell the difference.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Captain.
Ties are mandatory.
Thanks. Okay. I think this will be, we'll be ending our question and answer session here because of the time constraint. However, there are some more questions which I will be sending either by email or by chat to all our panelists. They can be answered later on at your leisure. So all the questions will be taken into account. Thank you very much once again, the panelists. Now I'm going to hand over the proceedings to Captain Kaustubh Pradhan, our Deputy Master of the Company of Master Mariners of India. Captain Pradhan, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohan Naik. It's been a wonderful session. And let me now perform a very pleasant task. And to do that, I'm going to invite our warden, Captain Teslin Almeida. Captain Almeida, over to you, please.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am really proud to be given this moment. And, well, the moment is here because I've been the editor of the Command Journal for the last 5 years. And yes, it has been a difficult task, but it has also been a very, very pleasant task. And I have learned so much over the years. And I'm proud to be the editor. So what I have to say to all of you now today is that we are ready to launch our online version. Well, with the pandemic and all these things happening, we cannot publish or print the book. We can publish the book, but we can't print it. So we're going to launch an online version, which is ready to go onto our website. Okay. So in order to do that, I would like to call Mr. Deepak Shetty to do us the honors. And I'd give you a small brief about Mr. Deepak Shetty. Most of you will know him as the Director General of Shipping, the former Director General of Shipping. Mr. Deepak Shetty is retired from the Indian Revenue Services, IRS, from the Civil Services of the Government of India, where he retired as Secretary to the Government of India. Prior to that, as I said, we all know him closely as the Director General. And Mr. Deepak Shetty has had a very, very illustrious career in which he has received 24 national and international awards. He was also bestowed the Presidential Award of Appreciation for his specially distinguished record of service. This was granted to him and awarded on the Republic Day of 2002. He also received in that year the Commendation for Meritorious and Sincere Services. Mr. Deepak Shetty has also been conferred with commendations by the Foreign Minister, Government of India, the Foreign and Maritime Affairs Minister, Government of Seychelles, and from the Director, Maritime Security at Interpol. Ladies and gentlemen, currently, Mr. Deepak Shetty is empaneled on the global roster of experts of the United Nations in areas of maritime transportation and maritime crime. Mr. Deepak Shetty, sir, we will be highly honored if you could verbally declare the online command journal formally launched, and thereafter, if you could share your thoughts and a few more words with those of us gathered here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hand over to Mr. Deepak Shetty.
Thank you very much, Captain Tessin Almeida. And I must, first of all, express my deep sense of gratitude for the very kind introduction that you have just put out. I'm humbled by that. It's an honor indeed for me to declare this command issue released. What I think gives me greater sense of gratification is that this is an online version, which I think is in sync with the times that we live in. And I hope that going forward, even post-normalization, once COVID is behind us, that it continues to be an online version to the extent that it deem it appropriate. So with that, I'm delighted. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm absolutely delighted to be here amidst all of you this evening. Perhaps it's afternoon in London. May I extend my warmest thanks to the Company of Master Mariners of India and to Dr. Captain Suresh Bharadwaj in particular for this very kind invite extended to me to be amidst all of you. I was hearing with rapt attention for the past close to about an hour and a half. I think it's been very, very insightful. It's been a great learning experience for me in terms of takeaways and derivative lessons. I think all the presentations by the panelists have been of an exceptionally high order. So it sort of gives a window of how London has been able to retain its numero uno position consecutively since 2014 up until now. That's an extremely enviable reputation to carry. And of course, it's also heartening to note in that ranking list, which was shared by Dr. Bharadwaj, that Mumbai has moved perhaps from the 10th slot to around 17 as late as last year. Hope that it is a sign of times to come in the future. But I think I must also mention here that let me just contextualize this to an overall setting in terms of where we are in the contemporary times. While this is extremely thematically both contemporary as well as futuristic, I think it will be prudent for us to remind ourselves that we are in the midst of very, very tumultuous times. I think that this is characterized by multiple strands of developments which are exponentially taking place all around us in the globe. Let's look at, for example, strand number one, which is the geopolitical and strategic peace. I think it's an extremely volatile world that we are living in. There are several flashpoints which are emerging, so-called hotspots in terms of geostrategic issues. So that has a fairly adverse bearing in terms of global trade. If that was not enough, you have the virtual demise, if I may. I'm not writing the obituary of the World Trade Organization, but if you've closely watched from what was a very unipolar or bipolar world to now nations, jurisdictions, sovereign countries, which are pitching in to go with national fervor. They're trying to sort of become very, very individualistic, insular in that approach. So the overall universal rules of the game, which underpinned global trade under the ambit or the umbrella of the WTO, is crumbling. Just to give you a sense, I don't know how many of you have followed this up. There is a dispute settlement mechanism under the World Trade Organization. So there is a body which is set up to arbitrate disputes amongst member jurisdictions in regard to trade contentious issues. And would you believe it that for the past couple of years, this body has not been set up thanks to the animosity and the acrimony which is characterizing the proceedings in the World Trade Organization. So the impact that it has is extraordinarily deleterious to world trade going forward. You then have a COVID situation. and then you have the complication post this spat between the US and China, which is now spilling over into an era. And I mean, perhaps there are two ways that you can look at it. Is the disintermediation and the disruption of the global supply chain networks. There is a move towards self-sufficiency and self-dependency, as it were. So the logistic supply chains are getting enormously dislocated. So all of these will have fairly salient implications and ramifications for the way we envision the world going forward. To me, I think if I just very quickly, I am mindful of the constraints of time because we are pushing the envelope to close to 7 p.m. in India, Indian Standard Time, but I'll keep it short. So what I look at it is that if UK and London in particular has occupied this primacy of place as a maritime destination, clearly amongst other things, there has been a very salubrious ecosystem which has been built around it. And to me, the hallmark of this, I mean, as a former civil servant and having spent as 6 years in the National Maritime Administration of India, is that this is a very enabling ecosystem where I think the hallmarks of the traits which underpin this are characteristics such as, pushing the boundaries of excellence, promotion of professionalism, looking at the bigger picture and sort of, envisioning as to what will unfold in the world going forward. I think these are very critical pieces for us to absorb, because if any destination across geographies, if it bids fair to emulate the example of UK or the second position Singapore, if I read that ranking list right, is that you need to look at things in perspective and very, very holistically. So before I sort of go on to sharing some of my experiences as having been head of the National Maritime Administration, I have 4 pieces to share. But before that, let me come back to it. The way I see it, the way I visualize this is that if you want to push the envelope, the boundaries of excellence in the direction of becoming a maritime destination, and more significantly, sustaining it on the long term, and that is the key to it. And I'm oft reminded of a saying, it's relatively easy to scale the Mount Everest, but then to stay there and, and in a rarefied atmosphere, essentially to attain the heights of excellence and continue to sustain it at that benchmark is a singular challenge. So that's it. Very broadly, the way I look at it is that any country or any jurisdiction, any destination clearly will have to subscribe to certain basic premises. And there's no gainsaying and getting away from that. And a couple of them are that you need to pitch in very robustly for innovation, which means that you look at disruptive technologies. You need to also align it with a very robust research and development architecture. And then a piece which is often sort of lost sight of is how do you introduce the element of an IPR, an intellectual property right? Because, there is enormous leverage which you can sort of pick up from an IPR regime, which can enable you to sustain some of all of this. You then need to go and look at, when I said the ecosystem, you look at the backward linkages and the forward linkages. That's how you bring a holistic architecture to this. Some of the other elements to my mind are also, you look at, somebody referred to climate change, which is you need to subscribe to the broad matrix of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, or in whatever nomenclature you may wish to, call it by. You look at, if you're in the industry part of the architecture, you need to subscribe to environmental, social, and governance standards, the ESG. Just to contextualize this to what is happening in the corporate world, if you look at the way private equity players, venture capitalists, angel investors, institutional investors are looking at critically, let's say the indexes, the capital market indexes. If I have to relate it to India, the National Stock Exchange Index, the NSE Index, or the Bombay Stock Exchange Index. it is now a given that all of these, whether they are overseas or Indians, are now increasingly holding companies responsible for their compliance with ESG standards, the subscription to the SDGs, because the downside risk of non-subscription, non-embracing, non-compliance with this is enormous. So you must understand that if in the maritime industry, if you want to scale, and look to corporatize entities, you need to embrace ESG and this. Then you look at the disintermediation, and the whole slew of value-added services. I'm fast-forwarding it because of want of time. Clearly, I mean, this is a hackneyed or a trite repetition, but I think even at that cost, it might worth the underscoring that you need to have very deep and wide partnerships between the private players and the government at the PPP level, private-public partnerships, which means that you look at, collaborating with the entire chain of stakeholders. More importantly, then you look at adoption and trying to capitalize on the new age technologies which are emerging. Look at information technology enabled services, information communication technology, look at artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, and what have you. I mean, you need to bring all of this into play to ensure that all of this gets fed into this ecosystem to keep it going forward. Let me just then very swiftly underscore the importance of the fact, and there is no gainsaying and getting away from this, that you need to have extremely robust and sustainable institutional mechanisms of coordination and collaboration between the government, the industry, and the academia. Research and development, which I alluded to earlier, cannot be a standalone issue. You have the R&D has to be relevant to industry usage. So clearly, industry will have to drive that. And then you need to have these kind of partnerships. There is another element to this, to my mind, which is equally salient, is that you need to have some body or an organization which assumes the shape of a think tank and looks at the bigger picture and constantly does a 360-degree scanning of the scenario, and does a future crystal ball gazing as it were, and tries and understand as to what are the short-term, medium-term, and long-term trends that are emerging in the globe, which will impact or perhaps impair global shipping, and how does the industry, the government, and the academia prepare itself. So it has to be this, this very, very engaging interface between government, R&D institutions, industry, academia, and the think tanks. Let me just spend the next few moments in trying to highlight what perhaps have emerged as a few discernible trends in the past few years in the direction of, trying to push India in the boundary towards a maritime destination of global standards. Having spent close to about 4 years in my initial tenure as second in command as the Joint Director General of Shipping, I think I pretty much realized and sensed that, while this was not meant to disparage the Office of the DG Shipping, which has a legacy of its own dating back to the year 1949, despite all the baggage that it carried, the understanding, and this was driven by the industry as well, was that you needed to modernize and completely revamp the service delivery mechanism of the National Maritime Administration, which is represented by the Director General of Shipping. And this clearly, the clarion call was that we had to move away from an offline architecture to an entirely online service delivery. So what I was able to do, and I'm saying it with utmost due deference and humility, is with immense collaboration from all stakeholders and with the enormous support of my own colleagues within the organization, is that we understood that we needed to do a complete business process re-engineering of the dynamics of the DG Shipping's office. We identified close to about 97 elements of service delivery which we were rendering over a period of time. And we sort of chose a partner from one of the major consultancies, and we quickly realized that a lot of these processes that of the 90s of the entire were completely OTOs, had become outdated and were irrelevant. And so we decided to junk a whole host of them. And then we said, let's move on organically to the next stage, which is if you're able, if you know, at the end of the day, the National Maritime Administration has a critical role to play in the overall scheme of things, as it were, to enable the development of an amenable ecosystem. And to that end, what we did post the business process reengineering, or the BPR, which as the acronym goes, is to try and completely digitize, automate the service delivery. And I'm happy to say that we were able to sort of, by the time I demoted my tenure towards the end of 2016, when I superannuated, close to about approximately 80% of the services of the Directorate General of Shipping across the board were fully automated. What was intended and what was actually done was that from the filing of an application to submission of accompanying documents, to submission of the administrative fee, to sort of monitoring the flow chart of that application in the office of the DG Shipping, to an approval or a disapproval, as the case may be, all of that was embedded and fully automated. So there was no need for any footprint physically of an interface, because we understood, and this was a very clear recognition, realization that one of the ways that you attempt to rationalize and revamp and completely reorganize, rejig and redo the entire architecture is that you minimize the interface between, the human interface between a functionary in the DG Shipping, and this goes across to all government offices as well. You minimize the interface, and then what you do is you then eliminate arbitrariness, capriciousness, the discretionary elements, the possibility of rent-seeking behavior, corruption, and all of that, and the elements of harassment. So it was in that direction, that recognition, which drove us to automate this process. And I'm happy that almost about 80% of this we were able to succeed by the end of 2016. And I do believe that post that, I think things have only gotten better. One of the other strands, and I could go on and on, I mean, I'll just try and wrap it up, try to highlight some of the salient elements is, again, this was to contribute towards building an ecosystem which enabled, the maritime sector to sort of flower, in a manner of speaking, was, we said that the regulatory mechanism which enveloped the maritime industry in terms of legislation, maritime regulations, we needed to re-look at that, revisit, and see whether, this was designed to serve modern and future interests and requirements of the industry. To that end, what we quickly did was that, just to give you illustratively, very indicatively, there was this legacy issue of the Admiralty Acts. And would you believe it that the Admiralty Acts, which we had until 2015, were of vintages going back to the years 1831 to 1830 to 1891, which was the pre-independence era. This is despite the apex Supreme Court of India nudging in a landmark judgment in the year 1992, which was the famous M.V. Elizabeth and the others, urging the government to come up with a new Admiralty Act. It finally devolved, and it was our good fortune that we were able to succeed in pushing and drafting completely a new maritime admiralty legislation, which we then got it passed to the parliament, and since 2016, that's a new law. And we were able to junk all those legacy acts. Simultaneously, we embarked, again, with the mandate of the Ministry of Shipping to completely redraw the maritime legislation, which was the Merchant Shipping Act of the year 1958. But you must understand, there are naysayers here. There are critics who would probably carp and cavil and say that, these legislations are not the best piece of legislation. But I'm saying, when you pursue in the pursuit of perfection, public service never gets delivered. It's just as well you live with something which is relatively very good or good, and then keep modifying it time and again. Because if you pursue the absolute utopia and say that you need to aim at the very best legislation, you never get there. So having said that, in 2015, when we embarked on a new maritime bill, which we drafted, submitted to the government, and I must sort of very briefly touch upon this, that on the 12th of May 2017, this was deliberated in the Select Committee of Parliament, comprising members of both Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. This is 5 months after my superannuation. And I'm happy to share this, and I'm again saying it with utmost humility. It was commended, broadly speaking, as a very progressive move. However, the Parliamentary Select Committee had a few observations to make, and the ministry was urged to come back and deliberate and come back on those points. Unfortunately, I'm not aware, and this is not a critique of the government, and this is not to say that I'm no more bound by the civil service conduct rules. I'm a free bird, as it were. But just to give my 2 bit of opinion, it's a pity that 4 years down the line, the MS bill is still not seen the light of the day. We are still groping on the dark. Let's leave that aside, park that aside for a moment. Again, what we did, and this was, this was to ease the burden of legislation and make things simple and rational. We examined 67 merchant shipping rules which were prevalent at that point in time, and in an exercise which spanned just about 6 months, we identified as many as 14 legislations which dated back to 58 and from then on as being completely outdated and hopelessly out of sync. And we were able to revoke, with the approval of the ministry, as many as 14 of these rules. And trust me, these constituted or represented 20% of the overall architecture of the merchant shipping rules. That was a major step in trying to simplify and make things, enable the industry to free itself from this regulatory baggage. Now, coming to the merchant shipping bill, and I will not take this forward much further. I gave a solemn commitment to the government of India that if the merchant shipping bill, which we redrafted, the new one as of 2016, if that were to go through, and that had only 16 chapters, unlike 25, and I had given a solemn commitment that there would be only 16 corresponding MS rules drafted, and not the 67 or even the 53 that we had subsequently. I said, we have identified areas where we can completely rationalize and do away with it and make it as simple as possible. So the point I'm trying to drive and underscore here is that when you look at how we grow as a maritime nation, is you need to create an ambience, an overall architecture where you address and make service delivery from the National Maritime Administration as simplified, as user-friendly, and as dissociated from the physical interface as possible and completely automated. You then free up national legislations, make processes of registration of ships easy. We attempted that to a significant extent. But at the end of the day, I must also indicate here that there were some other significant moves which were initiated. Without dwelling too much of it, I'll just give you an overview. Sometime in 2015, 2016, there was this ambitious program of the Government of India, driven by the Ministry of Shipping, which is known as the Sagarmala project, which is the string of pearls. This is essentially a revival of a project which dated back to the year 2002. So what essentially the Sagarmala program aimed was a cluster development approach. And this is where we take it to, the overall theme of what we were deliberating all this while in the past 2 hours. MERs, Maritime Economic Regions, were envisaged under Sagarmala, where port-led development. Ports would become, through a hub and spoke model, the drivers or the stimulants or the catalysts for development in a region surrounding the geography of every major port to the extent of around 200 miles, and ensure that all the value-add services and backward and forward linkages were built progressively through a stimulus package in terms of incentivizations, whether it's a monetary incentive or a fiscal incentive or any other form of availability of land, etc. So this was envisaged. Some progress made, but I think probably the pace could get accelerated. But we are still a long way from going in that direction. The other development, which is a happy augury, is that driven by the Mumbai port, Mumbai has become now a major hub for cruise tourism, cruise vessel industry. So that's a step in the very same direction of a cluster approach. If Mumbai bids fair to become, to scale up as a maritime destination of global standards, I think it is just as well that this momentum gathered for having Mumbai as a hub port for cruise tourism would contribute to that very, very clearly. In a very small scale version, you have Goa, which has become the first maritime cluster, a place called Varna in the state of Goa. However, what has happened is there's a big caveat and a qualifier. What has been done is that this cluster is linked primarily to the shipbuilding industry. Not to diminish the importance of that, but it is localized to the shipbuilding industry and all associated services in terms of the forward and the backward linkages in that industry. So clearly, there is an increasing realization and an understanding that you need to look at the bigger picture, scan the entire spectrum of all that is required for cluster development, because you cannot look at individual pieces. You need to string all of them together to ensure that cluster development happens substantively and on a sustainable basis going forward. With this, I think I'll pause because we've overshot the time. This is broadly to give an overview, while I compliment London and the other destinations which have maintained their positions over a period of time. I must also congratulate all the stakeholders in those jurisdictions which have contributed to this culture of excellence. And I think that's where the derivative lesson lies. We need to imbibe the salient fabric of aiming at excellence day in and day out, of trying to professionalize ourselves. And I think one last piece which I wanted to share as a thought and a pause there is that unless at a national level we look at maritime industry and say that this is a critical piece to India's future national aspirations as a geostrategic power, and I'm not talking militarily, I'm not just talking in terms of hard power, I'm even referring to the soft power, the soft skills element here. And there's a slew of skill development programs which can be dovetailed to this, is that we need to incorporate maritime industry in its entirety and position it up front and center in the national scheme of things as a priority area, and say that if we bid fair to become a geostrategic and important player, then maritime industry will have a very, very crucial role to play. And unless we park that and say that this is part of an overall transportation strategy, I'm afraid we will probably lose traction in this. That's it. This is just a broad overview. I must thank the Company of Master Mariners and Captain Bharadwaj for this opportunity afforded to me to be here amongst you. It's been a privilege and an honor, and I personally have learned a great deal in the course of this in terms of the presentations of the panelists, and I commend all of them for the top-notch quality of the presentations. I avail this opportunity again to wish every one of you here the very best, both professionally and personally. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Deepak Shetty, sir. And well, I think if I'm not mistaken, I must have read at least 30 comments in the chat, all commending you on such a beautiful and well-spoken speech. I would say that you have put such fervor and passion into what you have done all these years, and right now you have expressed yourself right from the heart. Thank you, Mr. Deepak Shetty. And well, I would like to also tell everybody it is for this reason that even now, Mr. Deepak Shetty is empaneled on the global roster of experts of the United Nations in the area of maritime transport and maritime crime. So that was Mr. Deepak Shetty for you, everyone. I now hand over to our host.
Thank you, Captain Cheslin. Amazing address. No words to describe. On one hand, we saw what how UK maintains its position, and on the other hand, Mr. Deepak Shetty has given us an insight on how India should progress. Today we are at number 7. Let's climb to number 6 level, and take the first step, the baby steps. But we should do it, and we will do it. Thank you very much, sir. Deepak Shetty, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we just have a final formality left now. I would like to invite our CEO, Captain Shashi Kumar, to propose a formal vote of thanks. Captain Shashi Kumar.
Thank you, Captain Pradhan. Mr. Deepak Shetty, former DG Shipping, respected Captain BK Jha, Master CMMI, office bearers, senior CMMI members, members of the shipping fraternity, and all the participants. It's my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks. I, on behalf of CMMI, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Mr. Deepak Shetty, sir, for his awesome address. I would like to thank the distinguished panelists, Captain Chadburn, Captain Ajit, Jacob, Mr. Bob, Dr. Bhattacharya, in taking the time out of their busy schedule and participating in today's CMMI webinar and giving us the insight into the industry, government, and academia, which makes UK numero 1 in maritime destination. I would like to thank Dr. S. Bharadwaj, CMI Warden, for conceptualizing the theme, introducing the speakers, and also moderating the panel discussion. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank Captain Mohan Naik, CMMI Warden, for moderating the Q&A. Thank you, sir, again. I would like to thank the media who have been covering the events, that is Marex, Seajob, Vandarka Shipping, Sailor Today, Saga Sandesh, and Maritime Destination. A special thanks to Captain Nangya for Sailor Today YouTube. As no program is successful with a single person, I extend a big thanks to Master BK Jha for his encouragement, support, and enthusiasm. Captain Pradhan, Deputy Master, for playing a key role in edging all of us to raise the bar of CMI events. Captain Basin, our Secretary General, for his unstinted support 24/7. Captain Almeida, Treasurer, Editor of the Command, for his support and brief on the CMI first e-version of the command. Office staff, Mr. Sudhir, for his support. Last but not the least, we thank all the participants without whom the webinar would not have been possible. Thank you all.
Can I come in, Captain Shashi Kumar, just very briefly?
Yes, sir.
Without taking much time, I am deeply humbled by all the observations of the attendees on the chat box. It may perhaps be difficult for me to sort of convey my thanks to all of them. So, but I avail this opportunity with due humility to convey my deep sense of gratitude for all the observations that they've made. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Over to Captain Pradhan.
Yes, with that, we come to the end of this session. I've just unmuted everybody, so you can all interact and, in case you want to give some comments. So everybody's unmuted. Please join.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful.
Thank you very much, all the panelists, Captain Bharadwaj, Captain Mr. Deepak Shetty, sir. Thank you very much for participation and giving the insight. Yes, we will be number 1. No doubt in that. We will replace. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a lovely afternoon.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak Shetty, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll take you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deepak. Not only I, but some of the family have also been sitting and listening to your wonderful address. Thank you.
That's probably the advantage of webinars.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Captain Ajit, Jacob, thank you so much for wonderful insight from the MCA UK. You've taken all the time and been with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Captain Ajit.
More than welcome, and it was really enlightening to hear Captain Shetty as well. Probably would touch base with him at some point. And Thanks for everything.